The hum of tires on gravel was the only sound Daniel could hear as he navigated the narrow, winding road through the remote South African bushveld. The stars above were hidden behind heavy clouds, and the surrounding wilderness was swallowed in darkness. It was nearly midnight. Daniel, a seasoned wildlife biologist, had spent the day tracking a pride of lions. Tired but focused, he kept his eyes on the road ahead, fingers lightly gripping the steering wheel of his aging 4x4. The headlights cast two narrow beams ahead, cutting through thick blackness. Bushes blurred past on either side. Nothing moved. Then some car jerked. He slammed the brakes. Dead center in the road stood a massive male lion, illuminated perfectly by the headlights. His mane was thick and windblown, casting long shadows. His golden eyes glowed. He didn't flinch, didn't blink, just stared directly into the windshield. The engine hummed. Quietly, Daniel didn't move. He barely breathed. The dashcam ticked on, capturing every frozen second. The lion remained still, unblinking, majestic, immovable. Seconds passed, stretched like wire. Something in the air shifted, tension thick as fog. The kind of primal silence where you realize you are not the dominant being in this moment. You are not the observer, you are being observed. And then the lion slowly turned his head and walked off into the night. 2 weeks earlier, the midday sun burned hot over the rolling plains of the reserve, casting heat waves above the dry grasses. Daniel stood at the hood of a battered field truck, eyes fixed on a GPS tablet screen. No signal. Kovu was gone. Kovu wasn't just any lion. He was a former rescuant, caged, abused, and rehabilitated through years of careful care. When he was finally released into the wild, Daniel had been there, watching the lion take his first uncertain steps into freedom. The bond had been immediate. For over a year, Kovu had adapted well. He was strong, wary, and smart, known by rangers for his striking black-tipped mane and unusual calm near humans. But then, 10 days ago, his GPS collar stopped transmitting. At first, the team thought it was a technical glitch, but then came the whispers. Poachers, gunshots in the night, scattered bones found near a dried-up watering hole. Locals assumed the worst. Daniel refused to believe it. "You don't know him like I do." He snapped at a ranger who suggested calling off the search. He hiked deeper into the bush alone, searching for paw prints, broken branches, anything. Sleepless nights, days combing through thick underbrush. His hands were scratched raw, and his voice hoarse from calling the lion's name into empty wilds. Still, nothing. But Daniel wouldn't quit, because he had seen the fight in Kovu's eyes, the will to live, to reclaim what was taken. He had to be out there. Back to the pitch-black road. The lion still stood in the headlights, unmoving. The car engine idled quietly, Daniel frozen behind the wheel. Then he saw it. A small, jagged scar above the lion's right eye. Kovu. Daniel's breath hitched. It was him somehow. Against every odd he was alive. But something wasn't right. The lion didn't growl, didn't move, just stared with unsettling stillness, eyes clouded with something Daniel couldn't place. Fatigue. Fear. Cautiously, Daniel rolled the window down an inch, the glass groaning softly. He called, voice barely more than a whisper. That was when Kovu moved. One slow, heavy step, then another. His massive paw dragged slightly. He was limping. The lion reached the front of the vehicle, eyes never leaving Daniel's, and then collapsed. Dust rose gently around his body. Daniel's instincts kicked in. He flung the door open and rushed forward. Crouching beside the lion's massive form, he pressed his hand gently to the lion's ribcage, still breathing, but shallow. Weak. Daniel scanned his body, deep gash along his rear flank, ribs showing through matted fur. Wounded, starving, but alive. Kovu. Daniel whispered again, overwhelmed. Somehow, he had found his way back. Daniel's hands moved carefully through Kovu's tangled mane, searching for the worst of the wounds. That's when his fingers brushed something unnatural, fabric. He pulled it free, a torn piece of dark cloth, soaked in dried blood. His pulse quickened. Further down, tangled deep beneath the fur, was something metallic, a GPS collar, cracked and splattered with blood. But this wasn't the collar their team had fitted Kovu with. This one bore a foreign serial tag, painted in an unfamiliar code. Someone else had been tracking him. Daniel's stomach turned. Poachers. Before he could process the thought, a distant light pierced the darkness behind him. Headlights. Daniel looked up. An SUV was approaching from the opposite direction. Black, sleek, moving slow to slow. He acted fast, dragging Kovu behind the front of his truck with effort, shielding both of them in shadow. The SUV rolled past, its headlights sweeping across the road like searching eyes. Through the tinted windows, Daniel caught the faint shape of a driver face obscured. Still, then the vehicle paused. Daniel held his breath. Seconds passed like minutes, and then, without warning, the SUV pulled away, disappearing into the night. Like a phantom, Daniel exhaled shakily, heart pounding. Someone else had been after Kovu, had captured him, tagged him, and Kovu had escaped. But not unmarked. The message was clear. They were watching. Daniel sat on the ground beside the truck, the bloodied collar in his hands, the lion breathing faintly beside him. He turned the collar over again, tracing the serial code with his thumb, a string of numbers and letters he didn't recognize. But the design was all too familiar. It belonged to a notorious poaching syndicate. One Daniel had only heard whispers about, an illegal outfit known for capturing and trafficking exotic wildlife for underground trade. Leopards, pangolins, even lion bones sold as trophies or medicine. They had taken Kovu somehow. Through pain, captivity, and tracking tech meant to enslave, Kovu had escaped. And against all odds, with no GPS, no direction, no help, he had made his way back to the only human who had ever protected him, to Daniel. The realization hit like a punch to the chest. Kovu hadn't wandered by chance. He had come back on purpose. Through miles of wilderness, injured, hunted, he chose Daniel. Tears welled in Daniel's eyes as he looked at the lion beside him. The trust, the bond, the loyalty it had never broken. Daniel placed a hand gently on Kovu's paw. You came home. Daniel's fingers fumbled over the radio dial, twisting through static. Ranger base, come in. I need backup. Injured lion. Possible poacher surveillance. Over. Silence. He repeated the call twice. Nothing. Just hissing white noise. The signal was jammed. Panic threatened to rise. But he pushed it down. He had no time to wait. Kovu lay limp beside the truck, breath shallow and uneven. Daniel moved fast, rolling out the portable lift ramp from the back of his vehicle, a standard tool for large animal transports. With careful strength and trembling urgency, he guided the lion's heavy body up the ramp, wincing with every strained movement. Blood smeared the metal as Kovu slid into the cargo space, blanketed with canvas and foam. Daniel jumped into the driver's seat and gunned the engine, wheels spitting dust behind him. They were moving. Relief lasted all of 30 seconds. In the rearview mirror, a faint blinking light caught his eye. He looked up, a drone, small, silent, following. A red light blinked beneath its underbelly. They knew, somewhere, the poachers were watching, tracking him from afar. Adrenaline surged. Daniel pressed harder on the pedal, heart pounding as the road twisted ahead. Every turn felt tighter. Every shadow looked suspicious. He gripped the steering wheel tighter. He wasn't just transporting an injured lion anymore. He was protecting a witness, a survivor, a symbol, and whoever had done this to Kovu, they weren't finished yet. Dust exploded behind Daniel's truck as he tore down the winding dirt road, the engine growling in protest over the rough terrain. The moon hung high, casting pale silver light over the wild South African bush. Trees and shrubs blurred by as the headlights sliced through the darkness. In the back, Kovu lay still, barely visible beneath the canvas, his body jolting with every bump and curve. Then headlights. Behind him, Daniel checked the rearview mirror, and his blood turned cold. A black SUV barreled toward him, closing fast. Same one from earlier. They'd found him. The truck lurched as he accelerated, tires slipping in loose gravel. The SUV kept pace, weaving aggressively. A high beam flash lit the interior of Daniel's cab, blinding for a moment. He swerved. The truck skidded dangerously close to a steep embankment. Dirt sprayed. A sharp turn came to fast. But Daniel knew this land. He spun the wheel and veered off the main road, onto a barely visible track-hand old fire trail, known only to locals and long abandoned. Bushes scraped the sides. The vehicle bounced violently. Branches slapped the windshield. Behind him, the SUV hesitated at the fork, then vanished from the mirror. Gone. Daniel slowed just enough to breathe, lungs burning, knuckles white. Kovu was safe for now, but they were far from done. The sky was just beginning to lighten, washing the horizon in soft pinks and golds as Daniel's dust-covered truck rolled into the small wildlife vet clinic, hidden on the edge of the reserve. He stumbled out, clothes torn, eyes bloodshot. Every muscle ached, but he didn't stop. The back of the truck opened with a metallic groan, and Kovu was carefully lifted out by waiting staff with stretchers. His breathing was shallow, but steady. Inside the sterile but familiar clinic, the vet, Leela, an old friend of Daniel's, worked fast. Fluids, scans, stitching. Hours blurred. Finally, she looked up, removing her gloves. He has deep internal bruising, dehydration, and a healing fracture, but he's stable. Daniel leaned against the wall, relief flooding him like a tide. Then, Dr. Leela showed him something in a tray. A tiny metal device. I found this lodged just beneath his shoulder muscle, she said grimly. It's a subdermal tracker, not from any legal system. Someone went to serious lengths to monitor him without detection. Proof. Criminal tampering. Daniel stared at it, anger and sorrow twisting together. But for the first time in days, there was hope. Kovu would live. A few days later, Daniel sat in his small office at the edge of the reserve, eyes fixed on the laptop screen. The room was quiet, save for the faint hum of a fan. He pressed play. The dashcam footage flickered to life, grainy black and white, but clear. Kovu in the headlights. Still, silent, then the slow limp, the collapse, and the look, the lion staring straight into the camera, eyes full of pain, trust, and something deeper. A plea. Daniel hesitated only a moment before uploading it. The lion who came for help, he captioned it simply. Within hours, it exploded across social media. By sunrise, it was on international news. Millions watched, commented, cried. Artists painted him. Schools taught his story. Wildlife advocates flooded in donations surged to support the reserve and anti-poaching efforts. The footage triggered a broader investigation. Authorities followed the GPS tag's serial number back to an underground poaching ring. Several arrests were made. More were coming. And, in the middle of it all, stood Kovu, not just a lion, but a symbol of trust, survival, and resistance. Daniel gave interviews. He told the story with care. Not for fame, but because it mattered. When asked why he thought Kovu came to him, Daniel smiled softly and said, because he knew someone would still be listening. The savanna was quiet as the first light of dawn spread across the horizon, painting the tall grasses in soft gold. Daniel stood beside the open gate of the release zone, watching as Kovu stepped down from the transport ramp. Strong again. Whole. The lion paused, taking in the sense of home, earth, wind, life. His muscles rippled beneath the now-healed coat. The scar above his eye still visible. A symbol of survival, not defeat. Slowly, Kovu began to walk forward. Each step was steady, deliberate. Grasses brushed against his legs. Birds stirred in the trees above. Daniel didn't call out. He didn't need to. Just before disappearing into the brush, Kovu stopped. He turned his massive head and looked back. Their eyes met. One last time. There was something ancient in that look. A memory, a bond, unspoken but unbreakable. Daniel's voice cracked as he whispered, "You found your way back. And I'll always be here." Then, without a sound, Kovu turned and vanished into the grass. Gone, but never lost. The wind picked up gently as the sun rose higher, and Daniel stood alone but at peace. Asterisk.